Hey everyone, welcome back to Unlearning. It is so nice to have you here again. We love inviting people over, especially those that can have real and raw conversations about their experiences. So I'd like to introduce you to Ella Sarol. She is a friend of ours at the podcast. She recently had an experience that I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. She fell for someone and felt like they had a really unique connection. He made her feel special and gave signs of an almost relationship, but just couldn't commit. She wanted to give him a chance and understand where he was coming from, so she stuck around. After all, no one is perfect. Despite all the signs pointing to no, she decides to stay. After she decides to end things, he immediately goes into a relationship with someone else and full on commits despite his earlier hesitation with Ella. Ella's here today to discuss choosing whether to let go or to continue to fight for a relationship. Hey, Ella!
Hey!
Great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to be on Unlearning with us. I'm so proud of you and Erica for starting this, and it's such an honor to be here. This podcast always makes me feel seen, heard, and understood. And if
Aw,
yeah, and if I could make someone else feel that way by sharing my story and my vulnerabilities today, then I'm happy to do so.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, whenever, like, you're one of the most vulnerable and real people that I know. And I mean that in the best way, in the sense that you're not afraid to speak up about your experiences, especially like recently on TikTok.
Yeah, I use that heartbreak for clout. But yeah, we're cancer. It's cancer.
But yeah, thanks again once more for sharing your story and being so open. Um, Now that we've set some context and I've also talked a little bit about your relationship, um, why do you think it is hard for people to let go of relationships, even if they know for a fact that it might not be the best idea to stay?
Yeah. Um, I think there's so many reasons someone chooses to stay in a relationship even if they know it's not good for them. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that when it all boils down to it, I think a common thread or an underlying similarity is that something is better than nothing, or having someone is better than no one at all. Like, for example, maybe you've been dating this person for years and you feel like you're not growing in the relationship, but something is better than nothing because this person is familiar, or um, maybe you don't think you deserve or can do better with another relationship, or for example you're in a really unhealthy relationship but you don't think that you deserve or can do better, but something is better than nothing. And I think for me in this experience it was really getting caught up in the dream of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was at the beginning of quarantine, and then I was on Bumble. I just wanted to try it out. And then when I saw him, and then when I got to know him, he seemed like everything I ever wanted on paper. Like all the embodiment of all my dreams, basically. He was so handsome, he was intelligent, he was hardworking and driven. And I think what made it hard for me to let go, even when things were turning sour, even when it was so clear that he wouldn't commit or he wasn't treating me right, was that if I let go, I lose any and all hope of the possibility of us being together. Like, some hope, a shred of hope, a little crumb of hope is better than nothing, than no hope at all. So I feel like that's one reason people choose to stay in relationships. Like, something is better than nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, that absolutely makes a lot of sense. And when I think about my past relationships as well, it was always, yeah, the fear of not wanting to be alone for me. And as you said, something is better than nothing. Um, and also the fact that I believed that I should understand this other person because I'm not perfect either. So who am I to deserve or say that someone should be perfect? So, like even though there were flaws and bad signs, like I took it as um what you always hear about what you should do in relationships, like compromising, understanding, and
Yeah,
I think, and patience, exactly. So I think to some certain degree, I tried to understand, even though there were definitely some things that at this point in my life I would not understand if I were in that relationship again. Um, yeah, that at least it really sounds familiar what you were saying. Um,
yeah. I feel like at one point you don't know if um should I keep hoping and seeing the good in this person, that maybe I just need to understand them a bit more, or
mhm,
is this relationship really not working and they're not my person? Like it can be hard to distinguish when you want to see the good in someone. Yeah.
right. And I mean, so you talked a little bit about your personal hesitation to let go, and you also told me before that your friends were telling you that it was time to move on. So, um, why did you feel like it was still something that you hesitated to do despite um, pretty much everyone telling you that it was time to move on?
Literally, no one liked this guy. Everyone told me that he wasn't a good guy. My friends, my family, you. But I think for one, it was hard for me to let go for maybe three reasons. I think the first was that it's very rare for me to connect with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And when I connections are so rare, and when they happen, there's something that I truly cherish and want to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my train of thought was that this is a rare connection, and it's so rare for me to meet someone as special as this, like my dream guy, and that my dream guy should be interested in me too. So I didn't want to let that go, even though it was clear that it was hurting me. So for one, that there was a connection, or the thought that I may never meet someone like this again, like this is my lucky break. And yeah, I think another reason is definitely like what I mentioned, the hope, or the hope that if I gave him more time, more understanding, more love, then he would eventually fall for me and choose me and want to commit to me, which is why I told you I washed his dishes. I washed his dishes and I bought him food, just tried to show him like wifey material, like this is what you could get if I were your girlfriend, just kind of like proving myself or trying to convince him to want me. And I think that's why I was afraid to let go, because if I let go, I abandon any and all hope of that happening, like the hope that he could be with me. And I think the last thing is I really fell for potential. Yeah, like what you were saying earlier, where you don't know if I should just be more understanding and loving, if this is a rough patch that any couple would normally go through, or this just isn't my person and this relationship isn't gonna work. Yeah, I think as an empath, like you choose to believe the good in people, you choose to believe in the best of them. And I think that's what happened to me. So I guess to sum it up, it was the connection and thinking that he was so rare that I wouldn't meet anyone like this. Another thing was definitely the hope and falling for potential. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well. I had a relationship wherein everyone didn't like him either.
Oh
Um,
God.
my family didn't like him either, but um, yeah, I really didn't listen. I was just like, but he loves me so much, and um, you know, if I really want to be with him, couples need to fight for their love and fight to be with so the person that they want to be with. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of that. So since you didn't listen to your friends back then, you
Yeah.
might listen to yourself. So if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
Okay, so I have an answer for this, but I would have to say, like, if I could go back in time and stop myself from going through 9 months of confusion, I actually wouldn't. I remember telling Erica about what happened to me, and like when I tell Erica about any failure, she's like, "I'm glad you went through that. I'm glad you got rejected. I'm glad you got your heart broken." And I'm just like, "Ouch," but okay. And yeah, looking back, I honestly wouldn't change a thing. And as much as it hurts, I'm proud of myself for living life in the arena, as Brene Brown would say. Yeah, and I remember it was you and Erica who told me to like listen to Brene Brown, and now I'm converted. But yeah, putting your heart on the line for someone is really risky and scary, and no one wants to do that. Like, this isn't some inspirational BS. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, like this isn't some inspirational BS. Like, it fucking sucks. And I remember talking to you the day after I ended things with him, and I told you that I didn't sleep for 40 hours. And I probably wouldn't have slept unless I took sleeping pills, but I was just, I just couldn't stop crying, couldn't stop replaying our conversation in my head, thinking about what happened and if I could have been enough. But as Brene Brown said, yeah, like true courage is showing up even when you don't know what the outcome is or when you can't control the outcome. And I'm really proud of myself for being me. Like what you mentioned, I'm open and I'm vulnerable, and I'm proud of myself for being vulnerable and genuinely caring for someone the way I did, even if it didn't turn out like I'd hoped.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just 25. I want to make mistakes, and it's okay to get my heart broken because I want to experience like the full depth and breadth of life, like the full spectrum of emotions, rather than having been, on my deathbed and realizing that, I was too afraid to put my heart on the line or fall for someone because I was scared of getting hurt, and I was just protecting myself that whole time. Um, but yeah, I'm 25, and it's okay to get your heart broken and to make mistakes, because with each heartbreak, you get closer to what you want, or what you want and need in a relationship. After that whole ordeal, I know what I can bring to the table and to a relationship, and I don't think I would compromise or settle for anything less. But going back, I do have an answer to that question, even though I would let myself go through that whole ordeal.
Right.
Um, what I tell myself would be to trust your gut and trust your intuition. Because I could tell from the start that this wasn't going to work out, that he's not my person, that God is using him for character development. Um, yeah, like this isn't the love of your life, girl. Don't kid yourself. I don't know. I essentially gaslighted myself or invalidated my own feelings when he would hurt me or cause me confusion or anxiety. I would kind of gaslight myself and invalidate my feelings because I wanted to see the best in him.
Yeah.
So I would trust my gut or my intuition.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, if this was the book of your life, you would still be in chapter 3 or 4. That this wasn't chapter, I don't know, 100.
Yeah, I'm not gonna give him that power. Oh my god. Yeah, for sure.
And do you think that there's anything at all that would have made you listen to this advice, or to yourself, or to your friends?
Yeah, I think something that really like snapped everything into place was when I was talking to my best friend Kath. And I think something that struck me was when I was talking to her and she asked, like, who do you care more about? Your friends and your family who have been telling you for months that this guy isn't for you, or that guy that you are simping for? I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term simping, Roxy.
You already explained that to me, but
Okay, I
please.
did. Okay. Yeah, simping is just like letting a person walk all over you. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's being a simp just because you care about them so much. And yeah, I have you ever seen the Lizzie McGuire movie, Roxy? Is that in your time?
Yes, it is in my generation. I'm not that much older. But yeah,
Okay.
what about the Lizzie McGuire movie?
It's kind of like that scene where Isabella is telling Lizzie, who are you gonna trust? Like this friend you've known your whole life, which is basically Gordo. or this guy who tells you your eyes shine like the stars, which is
Right.
Paolo.
Mm.
Yeah, so basically, she told me that, and of course, I told her, my friends and family, of course, you guys mean more to me. But she was like, why then does it seem like we've been giving you all this advice, but you're not listening to us? Like it comes in one ear and out the other. And I knew that I couldn't keep going to them when I was down or feeling bad, looking for reassurance when I was choosing this. Like I'm a grown ass adult woman, and these are, yeah, like if you want to stick around for this guy who is clearly not good for you, then at some point it's kind of on you that these are the consequences of your actions, and you have to kind of, yeah, you have to kind of stick through with it if this is what you're willing to put up with, instead of, coming to your friends and family looking for comfort or advice when you're not listening to it at all. That's when I kind of really decided to take matters into my own hands, which they
Right.
have always been in. But yeah.
Yeah. And does this experience change like your idea of if you believe that love conquers all?
I feel like love conquers all is such a loaded question, and I'm pretty hesitant about declaring anything as definitive as in it will apply in any and all situations with no exceptions. But for me, I do believe that love, of course, isn't a feeling but a choice, and it's a conscious commitment to love another person, even when it isn't easy, and especially when it isn't easy. I do believe that love is a powerful force, and that, because when it says like love conquers all, there's so many other things that come into play, like compatibility and practicality. Um, and I feel like just because some things don't work out, I'm hesitant about saying that it wasn't love. For instance, um, like my ex and I, before this guy, I dated someone for 3 years, and my ex and I didn't work out, and it didn't last forever, so it didn't basically conquer all.
Yeah.
But I still believe that that experience was still love, like that was still valid, even if, for example, with your exes, it may not have lasted forever. You were still in love at one point, even if it didn't conquer all or beat all the odds. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with my exes for sure, I had that mentality that I'm willing to do whatever it takes for this relationship to work.
Yeah.
And I would literally do everything, even if I felt like it was against what I believed in, whether it was changing my personality a little bit or um, doing or acting a certain way just because I knew that they liked it that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so in that train of thought, I think that's kind of what changed my mentality because um, I started to become unhappy and not realize who I was anymore when
Yeah.
I also changed and compromised myself.
Yeah.
And even though I really loved them in the past as well, yeah, I couldn't be happy with myself. So um, I don't think that kind of love is real love to begin with.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, in that sense, that feeling of love and that desire to make everything work despite no matter what is kind of a dangerous path to fall into, especially if it's at the expense of your own happiness and your own well-being.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in that sense, um, if it's like a passionate and fiery love and it's just about as you said feelings and it isn't rational anymore, then it really isn't real. Not that it was invalidated, but just that it's the kind of love that also eats you up inside, which
Yeah.
is also not the kind of love you want to have or the kind of love that is good for you.
Yeah. Like not
Yeah.
genuine love. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a different kind of love. It's still love, but probably not the love that I would go for again.
Yes. Yeah. That's true. I feel like there are also many different forms and types of love. Yeah.
Yeah. So if now looking back, like if for people who might be deciding whether they should let go or fight for the relationship, what would you
Mm-hmm.
think are like the top three things that you would watch out for as a sign that it's time to let go?
For my top three things, I would say the first is this person doing more harm than good? Because in general, I feel like we also discussed this before that a relationship should add value to your life. It should add happiness to your life. Like you should already be happy and content on your own, and then that relationship just it's like the cherry on top of the cake. So I think a relationship can go through a lot of tough times. There are storms, there are fights, there are disagreements, and that's all normal and a part of a relationship. But in general, they shouldn't have to be that hard. And if there are fights, you should be able to handle it in a healthy manner, in a good, strong relationship. um like what you were mentioning just now, like with your exes, you felt like they weren't adding more to you, they were kind of like subtracting from you, from who you are. And so that's one reason I feel like when this person is doing more harm than good. So for example, in my next relationship, I would want that guy to impress me and love me more than I impress and love myself. um yeah, before entering another relationship.
Right.
And I think my second thought on that is, or another important thing to ask is if this person is also willing to put in the work to fix the relationship. If they're willing to hear me out for how I'm feeling, or follow through on their apologies with action and make a change. Because I feel like once they've lost that will to work on it, to better themselves, to put in the work, then that's when it's really come to an end. I think with my ex, at some point, he just told me that he just didn't care anymore when I cried. Like he just got completely desensitized to it. I know, right? And I was like, huh? Like, and he also told me like he didn't care anymore to fix things. So that was when I was like, yeah, it's time to let go. And I feel like my last point in that is, does this person know how to fight the person who you're with? Because every couple will fight, but to know how to fight with one another and to know how to be able to communicate things in a constructive manner, and to forgive one another is so important. Like I remember you were also telling me about how you and Alessio kind of know how to fight with one another. Like when you have a disagreement, you know if the other person needs time to cool off, or after talking about it and being open about it, you can then just move past it and not keep bringing it up again. So yeah, those would be my three things. Is it doing more harm than good? Is this person willing to put in the work to fix the relationship? And does this person know how to fight with you in a constructive way? And if not, then it's just best to let it go.
Yeah, all of what you said really resonated with me. And when I think about doing more harm than good, at least for me personally, I think I would even, if I had to put a percentage to it, like divide the days in a week or a month of how often, of how much negative moments you have versus positive moments. I think if my partner and I had more than maybe 10% negative moments, like um, sorry, so 90% negative moments and then 10% positive moments, or if they even had 20% negative moments and then 80% positive moments, I think that would
Math.
even, yeah, sorry.
Math.
I might be Asian, but not great at math. Um, yeah, 80% positive moments and 20% negative moments might even already make me think twice about the relationship. And that's the kind of standard that I think everyone should have. Because if you're happy on your own and this person just makes you unhappy in general, even for
Yeah.
20% of the time, it's really not an enriching relationship anymore. And when it comes to, like, as you said earlier, being able to know how to fight, I think that's definitely the most important thing for a long-lasting and healthy relationship, because as you said,
Yeah.
you're always going to have something that you disagree about. You're always going to have something that you don't like about the other person.
Yeah.
And it's really knowing how to bring that up, but at the same time communicate it in a way that wherein you don't put the other person in a defensive position. And I think um there's this Instagram page like the Gottman relationship or the Gottman method, wherein they lay out like how to fight, and I think they have a really good way of putting it. So definitely check that out. Um,
Yeah. Because fighting isn't bad. I know couples who are like, oh, we never ever fight. We're so peaceful and happy. And I'm like, it's kind of weird if you never ever ever fight or disagree on anything. So I think at most you just have to learn how to constructively disagree.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Alessio and I, we'd never actually quote unquote fought in the where what you imagine in the movies, like people shouting at each other. We've never had
Yeah.
a screaming match, um, but we've definitely yeah disagreed, gotten annoyed, but it just never escalated to that point because it was yeah always very constructive and understanding and yeah so it would be weird for me if I also heard that they never disagreed on anything.
Yeah.
So in what scenarios do you think people should choose to stay, like considering all the difficulties that they might encounter in a relationship?
I think it definitely depends from person to person and relationship to relationship. Because, like what we were mentioning earlier, it can be so hard to distinguish whether we're going through a rough patch, whether you should just be more understanding and forgiving and patient, or this really isn't a good relationship. But I do think that if you would want to stay, or reasons to stay would be like the opposites of what I mentioned earlier. Like if this person is doing more good than harm, then stay. Or if this person is still willing to put in the work and make that change, then it's a good sign to stay. And yeah, if this person knows how to fight with you, then you could stay. So it's basically like the
The
reverse
opposite.
of, yeah, the opposite.
Yeah. I think we definitely, especially when, at least for me personally, when I didn't have a lot of experience with relationships, my only reference really were the romantic comedies I watched and the fairy tales I watched as well. So um, we would definitely forgive more than we needed to and try to understand more than we needed to.
Yeah.
Um, and I chose to stay despite, yeah, as I said, being unhappy. And I think in that scenario, I definitely needed more experience and confidence in myself to be able to say like, I don't need you.
Right?
I don't need you as my Prince Charming. Like I can be alone and I'd be way happier. I think that's also a
Yeah.
sign. Like if you know that if you're thinking to yourself like maybe I'm happier when I'm alone, um then that's definitely a bad sign that you're with this person.
Yeah. Like when yun nga, they're really doing more harm than good.
Right.
And I think I actually watched the School of Life video, which is by Elaine de Botton. I know Alessio watches School of Life too. And it's like we can't this forgiving or this like understanding of another person kind of comes from sometimes being a child with a parent who isn't available or isn't good to you. And
Mm-hmm.
as a child or as a baby, you can't wrap your head around the fact that this person who's meant to love you and protect you is actually not a very good person. So you keep forgiving them and you keep putting your faith in them when sometimes people are just not good people and they're not good for you. So I think
Right.
that's where that kind of dissonance, yeah, that was an interesting insight of where that kind of like over forgiveness comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can relate to that as well. I definitely over
Right.
forgave in my day. And
Yeah.
I think yeah, that makes a lot of sense also. Um,
Yeah.
so you mentioned earlier as well that there were thoughts that came to you after the breakup, wherein you said, maybe I wasn't good enough for him to commit, and you even mentioned that you tried to show your wifey side to
Yes.
impress
Washing
him.
his dishes.
But how do you deal with those thoughts? Like, um, the thoughts that maybe if you did something differently, or maybe if you were a different person, he would have committed to you.
Uh, like this is something that really I feel very deeply for. So with my ex, he left me for another girl. And with this guy, he also not only slept with another girl, but immediately committed to another girl after me. So it's hard not to think that if I were prettier, if I were richer, if I were smarter, more accomplished, sexier, if my boobs were bigger, if my butt was bigger, then maybe he would have liked me or he would have committed to me or wanted me enough to stay. Because with an almost relationship, I felt like we were so close to a breakthrough. Like we were on the cusp of something good, like on the cusp of a relationship. There was just like one tiny thing that was blocking it, or so I thought. And that's why I guess I stuck around as well, because I felt like just a little more, just around the corner, and he'll eventually pick me. But again, my best friend Kat knocked some sense into me when she said that you shouldn't have to convince someone into commitment, and you shouldn't have to negotiate your way, or you shouldn't have to negotiate yourself into a heart that wants you there.
Yeah,
Like it shouldn't be that hard. Like I don't want to be a maybe or an almost. I want someone. I don't want it to be yeah, like a maybe or an almost. I want it to be like a yes, like a hell yes. And I can accept that you won't be everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine. Not everyone would want to be like not everyone is attracted to you. Not everyone has like the emotional bandwidth in their life for a relationship or for commitment. And that's totally acceptable. But yeah, in the way I deal with maybe I wasn't good enough for him to commit thoughts. I want someone to love me and see me for all my insecurities and imperfections, and I want to feel safe and secure in that love. And yeah, like you shouldn't have to convince yourself or to convince that person and
yeah,
have to negotiate. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, when I grew up as well, there were so many rules that I thought I had to fulfill in order to be with someone, like maybe you need to play hard to get to keep him interested. Maybe
Yeah.
you need to, yeah, be wife material to keep him interested. Maybe you need to be more ladylike. And there were several people in my life who made me feel that way, for sure. Um, but really, the only rule, and as you said, like you shouldn't need to convince someone, because the only rule that you need to follow is you need to be yourself.
Yeah.
And if that person likes you, great. And if not, then oh well. But I mean, it's so much easier to say that as well. And I understand the feeling of, but I really like him. He's so perfect. I want him to like me back. But at the same time, it takes a certain level, I think, of developing your own self confidence and self worth to know that no, I don't really need him. Who cares if he's
Yeah.
good looking? Who cares if he's handsome? Who cares if he's
Yeah.
ambitious? And if you feel like um the validation depends on if he likes you or not, then it's just also a sign to yourself that you do still need to constantly work on self-care and developing self-worth, self-love, which obviously it doesn't happen overnight. And I think for
Yeah.
me personally, it's also taken me years, and it's still a work in progress, to constantly um yeah feel better and better about who I am.
Yeah.
And do you think this experience has changed the way you'll approach your future relationships?
Yeah, for sure. I think what I mentioned as well earlier, that I have less tolerance for bullshit. And yeah, I have less tolerance for putting up with someone who treats me badly or for lowering my standards and my boundaries.
Yeah.
And So one, I have less tolerance for bullshit, and on the other end, I feel like I'm so protective of my energy at this point. Because you think that you can just kind of isolate that to um, one point of your life, or you can box that in. But I feel like when I was dating him, I just felt so anxious and tired all the time. I was telling you I couldn't sleep, and I don't normally have insomnia. So I'm so protective of where I put my energy. And I feel like right now I won't even download dating apps, or, even as much as, after a breakup, you're tempted to stalk them or check up on them. I wouldn't
Mhm.
even do that because I think to myself, what if I see something and it ruins that peace of mind that I have right now? Um, yeah, I have less tolerance for bullshit, and I'm more protective of my energy.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me as well, every single relationship I've had, so I dated four people. I don't know anymore. Four people, let's say. um, every single relationship I've had taught me as well certain lessons that I carried into the next one. So basically, my standards slowly got higher and higher.
Higher and higher.
And when I thought, yeah, I got it, nope, I still don't got it. And every moment was a learning experience for me. So yeah, it definitely, I definitely have less and less tolerance for bullshit, as you said. And I think what changed as well was being able to set and enforce the boundaries that I had for myself.
Yeah.
So if I knew that I didn't like this certain quality about someone, even though he checked like all the other boxes, I would be confident enough to say, you know what, no, it's fine. I'm gonna run the
Yeah.
other direction and not even give him a chance to like prove that he's different. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds a bit harsh and maybe it sounds a bit strict. Um, but yeah, I mean, you just have these super huge deal breakers. Like, I don't know
Yes.
if the person is just not nice to other people, or if the person yeah, is, I don't know, like
Yeah,
they're
like
just,
that's who they are. They're
yeah,
not gonna change.
exactly,
And like I
exactly.
guess when you date them, you have to love them as they are, and you not fall for their potential, fall for the goodness that isn't there. I think I saw on TikTok that sometimes you romanticize someone because who they are isn't enough. Yeah, like
Yeah,
they're not a good person. That's why you romanticize other parts of them to make up for that deficit. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah,
That's what I did in the past as well. And
same.
and but how would you like, I mean, now that you have less tolerance for bullshit, how would you test for that at the beginning of a relationship? Because you don't want to like go 1 year and then realize, okay, this is bullshit. You know, you want to make that process as short as possible. So like
Yeah.
what would your quote unquote tests be? I don't like using the word tests because then it kind of seems a bit devious, but I guess like, you know, how do you tell, oh, okay, we're just gonna be friends, nothing more, you know? Um,
Yeah.
instead of like getting into this whole relationship again and you know getting hurt essentially.
Yeah. I think those are things you can really tell from the start. Um, and I feel like one way of knowing is when this person is so clear with their intentions that you don't feel any room for doubt or confusion or anxiety. And I feel like much as your gut can tell you that this is a bad person, it can also tell you when this is a good person. So yeah, I would say it that though comes with communication and being open with one another to talk about these kinds of things. Um, so yeah,
Do
like
you
knowing
think,
their intention.
right, and how would you find out about these intentions?
Just being open to communicating with each other, because there are people who, for example, when you try to delve into deeper topics, they won't really go there, or they won't be open and vulnerable.
Yeah,
uh, yeah, so it comes with them opening up as well, and setting your intentions from the start, because um, sometimes it's clear that when you meet someone, they know you're just going to be their friend, or they know they want a relationship with you. And yeah, it all comes with the intention, I think.
Right. I think for me, it definitely starts with knowing 100% for yourself what you're willing to deal with and what you're willing to let go of.
Yeah.
So, and for me, like from a personal experience, I thought that someone with ambition was really, really important. Someone who was really hardworking. I mean, Asian. So, in my head, like, yeah, someone who has big dreams for his life, etc. And when I met Alessio, he was. I mean, not that he's lazy or anything. It's not like that, but he was just really, really content and happy with his life, and he didn't need anything more than that, which meant that he didn't really have strong goals. He was just really happy with where he was. So at the beginning, I was like, is this really something that I can accept, that I can deal with? And um, you know, even though that was a no-brainer for me in the past, getting to see the other side of someone who is content and doesn't need much more to be happy um,
Yeah.
was also a huge learning experience for me because I'm the exact opposite. Like I always needed to reach higher, achieve more, um, be better, and meeting someone like that really changed my mind about having that as a deal breaker. And
Yeah.
I think like if I had to test that for like a new relationship, I'm definitely a questions person, and I have a whole list of, or I ask people a lot of questions to really try
Yeah.
and get to know them. Um, so I mean, I don't want to say like I'm gonna bring a list of 40 questions to my first date, but like just I guess talk about the things that matter. Like one of the questions that I asked Alessio, I remember at the very beginning of a relationship was, um, what's the worst thing about you if you were in a relationship with someone?
Yeah.
And that made us both think about our worst qualities as partners. And that also makes you assess what if that's something you're willing to put up with, or if that's something that you're not willing to put up with. And that's exactly what he said. His answer was, I'm not the most ambitious person.
Yeah.
Um, so like then it also allows you to set your expectations and see if this is something you're willing to deal with. So I think that's like a great question to ask someone, like if you're considering getting into a relationship with this person, what's the worst thing about you?
Yeah.
Basically. And
And I
then
feel like if they're even able to answer that question, that means that they have done enough introspection to know themselves well enough that
absolutely.
this is their worst quality, that they are, I guess it seems emotionally available if it seems like they're willing to delve into these tough personal questions and be vulnerable with you. So, yeah.
Yeah, and even with other questions like, what are you looking for in someone? And when their
Yeah.
answers are a little bit like, cute, pretty, then it,
Yeah.
it also is a sign for me that, as you said, they might not have done enough thinking or introspection, because self-awareness is so
Yeah.
important in a partner. And given that I know I'm personally always asking myself these questions and really self-aware, um, it's so important to me that someone understands what they don't like, what they're annoyed with, what
Yeah.
makes them happy, so that, because that is the first step to having good communication. Like if you don't understand what makes you annoyed, then you can't communicate it either, and it'll just come out in like shouts or fights, but never in a productive and nice way. So like what you said is absolutely true, that um, the introspection and self-awareness aspect is so important.
Yeah, that's true. And I like what you mentioned as well about the standards. Because I remember like watching this dating thing on YouTube, and she said to kind of write out like your standards, your deal breakers, and your preferences, and to know like the deal breakers you definitely wouldn't um, settle for less or go back on. And it's important to know which ones you can stick with and which ones you can let go of. And it's also important to realize that even if, for example, this guy I was dating, he was everything I could have wanted on paper.
Mm-hmm.
If he breaks your deal breakers, if he is overall just not a good person, then he just ain't it. Yeah.
For sure. And I think yeah, like I said, for me when I saw the other sides to not being ambitious, which was being content, being happy with his life, being self-confident, very
Yeah.
secure, um, and the other more selfish aspect to that was if he weren't ambitious, then he'd be willing to have more time for me and and not like be 200% focused on work, like those husbands that just go to work and never see their wives and stuff. Like he was never
Yeah.
gonna be that person. So um yeah, so I just chose to see like if the opposite side of that as well. And um yeah, like I said, even if you do have a list of deal breakers, it's also good to kind of like assess if your deal breakers are really not flexible, or yeah, if there's still something, if there's still good that you can see in the opposite of it. Like, and I think obviously for me, yeah, if someone were mean to other people that they don't know, then that just also shows that they're not nice people, or
Yeah.
I don't know, like things like that. So yeah, that might be
Yeah.
a huge deal breaker for me. But what would you do differently then if you could replay your relationship? Would you do anything differently? I mean, you also mentioned earlier that you um, would probably not tell yourself to stop, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would let myself go through that, but I think, I would just tell myself to trust your gut, like what I mentioned, and not do wifey things like wash his dishes or buy him food or let down your standards and boundaries. Like, trust your gut, and when your intuition is telling you that this isn't a good person, when he's doing more harm than good, then it's time to let go. It's time to choose yourself more than you choose him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like I would let myself go through it, but um, I didn't have to stay that long. I didn't have to stay 9 months.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I think he was all that time showing me who he was, and I just didn't want to believe it. But when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Yeah.
Right. And I think how long you stay is also directly related to how much you trust yourself. Like,
Yeah.
the more you basically trust yourself, the shorter it will take for you to think, okay, I'm going to go the other way now. And
Yes.
the more you just let yourself experience things, I guess, without trusting your gut, um, yeah, then it'll also take a longer time for you to get out of it. And it was exactly the same for me growing up, like 7 months, 3 years, without
Yep.
until I realized that yeah, um, I just need to run the other way.
I know.
um, yeah, and so in that regard, like, how do you think someone can build that self trust for themselves?
It's something that's so hard to build. But yeah, just keep trusting your gut and your intuition, even with the littlest things. Um, Practice being mindful of yourself and your emotions. Understand that they're valid. I feel like something that really helped me was to meditate and to journal and to introspect in myself. Um, yeah, I think like what you mentioned, more self love and more self care, because I think like what we did, we tended to put more of ourselves into the other person and not redirect that same care or that same belief in their good in ourselves. um, yeah, it's hard to build your intuition, especially when you feel like you've been invalidated or
By someone
gaslighted your whole
else,
life.
yeah.
Yeah, and even by this person, and then I'm also doing it to myself. I feel like I remember when he would do something really bad, he would tell me that I'm extrapolating if I felt hurt. So I would also tell myself that, oh my god, I'm just being OA, I should just be chill. um yeah, but like, no, it hurt.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, you should listen to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a huge like deal breaker for me as well, if someone invalidates your feelings. Um yeah.
Yeah,
That's a really like bad sign for me.
I
um
know. He was like a master gaslighter, honestly. Like, when something would happen, or when I tell him what he said verbatim, he said, "Those aren't my words. It was what I'm
right.
saying. That wasn't what happened." And yeah, when you don't trust yourself, or when you don't love yourself, you kind of just like will give in instead of holding your ground.
Yeah.
So yeah, hold your ground too.
Gaslighter and basically manipulator into making you feel that your feelings are not true, that
Yeah,
you should act a different way for him to also care about you.
yeah.
Okay, so Ella, we have come to the end of this beautiful discussion. I have learned a lot from you today. It honestly also sounds a lot like my past experiences, so it's always nice to constantly do a lot of self-reflection. And this is
Hmm.
something that we do with all of our guests. So at the end of the show, we always give like a few lightning questions, three to be exact. So if
Yes.
you could answer them in one sentence or less, that would be
Hmm.
amazing.
Okay.
So what is something you used to believe in, but have unlearned?
Well, I've kind of unlearned that, or something I used to believe in is that I could give my energy freely. But now I feel like it kind of has to be earned. I, like what you mentioned, never really believed in playing hard to get, and I still don't believe in playing games. Like, if I like someone, I like them. But I also kind of believe that you have to rein yourself. I have to rein myself in a bit more instead of just giving too much at the beginning. It's kind of like telling someone a secret when they didn't actually deserve to know, or sharing a part with someone. So yeah, that's something that I'm unlearning, to give too
Right.
freely of myself at the beginning. Yeah.
And if you had to make a law that you think would make the world a better place, what would it be?
I would make a law that requires major corporations to do something about the climate crisis. And they should be able to try these people with crimes against humanity. Yeah.
Very, very geopolitical.
Very Greta Thunberg.
Greta, she's my jam.
Yeah.
What are you still unlearning right now?
I think, related to the last question, I'm still unlearning gaslighting myself, and I'm learning more to trust my intuition and stand my ground. Yeah.
Nice. Beautiful. So thank you again for joining me for this conversation today. You can find Ella Sarol on social media, on Instagram, TikTok. I think you have a different TikTok username, but on Instagram, she's
Yeah.
at Ella Sarol, ELLASAROL. And if anything resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you on Instagram. So tag us at Unlearning with Us. And we can't wait to see you guys back again. Thank you so much again for your time today and for being
Yay.
vulnerable and for openly sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Roxy. I
Thank
hope